This is the Sales Whisperer podcast with Wes Schaefer, session number 3. Everybody, this is Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer. I've got a video podcast today. I've got my friend Jim Fortin from the great state of Texas on today. How are you, Jim?
Doing well, thanks. I'm glad to be here today, Wes.
And Jim hops right on. He looks at my bookshelf. He says, "Hey, when was the last time somebody cleaned up that bookshelf?" And I said, "Man, that's a working bookshelf, baby. We keep it real. Look at behind here, all notes and stuff. I bet those notes are like 3 years old, huh? Do you even use that?
No, those actually are. When I shoot videos, I don't script on any teleprompter, but I use some of my notes. Or if I'm thinking about a video I got to shoot this week, I'll walk by and just jot it down.
All right.
But what we're going to talk about today, and we'll go into this later, is I'm highly visual. So that being said, and we'll talk about how to use that in the sales process, when things are out of place, like your bookshelf back there, I can't rest till it's fixed.
Right.
Because I my whole world is visual. So if something's crooked or I got to actually make everything nice and neat, and then my world works better for me. So we'll talk more about NLP in just a bit.
All right, good, because I'm still personally wanting to learn more about NLP. And I ran across Jim years ago. I bought his program, and I'll link to it from my site. But Jim has experience and background, unique background, right? Sales training, NLP, hypnosis. A very unique background. And so I want to have him on. People know me doing a lot of work with Infusionsoft and online marketing. But I've always told people, my background is sales and, commission-only sales. And I always tell people, if you can't sell in person, I think maybe you can, but it's really hard to be able to sell in print, right? To sell online. So
yeah.
That's why I'm kind of bringing back a little more emphasis and focus on sales and sales training and prospecting and just where the rubber meets the road. You and I, you're a very good internet marketer. You've got membership sites, things we'll talk about. But would you say at the end of the day, the fact that you're a good salesman is what has helped you build your business?
Without a doubt. I'm just thinking through that, without a doubt, because I was going somewhere with that, and that sales, although I'm getting feedback, I'm getting
Oh, I hear you fine.
Yeah, no, I was getting, I could hear myself coming back through to you now. It's gone okay.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is sales, Wes. Everything. Every book on that bookshelf back there, somebody sold you this book. Somebody sold you that bookshelf. Somebody sold you that Sprint thing you're wearing around your neck.
Oh,
somebody sold you the computer. Yeah, somebody sold you the computer. Everything is sales. And the challenge is that I think sales has gone through sales has gone through an evolution over the last 50 years. Gillette has this commercial, "Not Your Father's Razor," back in, I think, in the 80s or whatever it was. So many people actually have ideas about selling professionals from back in the 50s. The way that sales training was set up and the way you answer objections and your responses and all that. With the advent of brain research the last 20 years, things have changed significantly in how people buy, and especially with the internet. I know this is kind of a shotgun answer, but you even talk about internet marketing. It's changed and it's evolving all the time. What worked 5 years ago in the sales process online doesn't work anymore because people are anesthetized to it. What's funny is my phone here, we all have phones. I do a lot of coaching. I know you do some coaching. And this has changed the game for a lot of people because years ago, people would open emails. Now people don't even open emails. The first thing they'll do is respond to a text before an email. So in the sales process. So, that was kind of a shotgun answer, but it's changing and everything is sales. And if people don't get that, many people say, well, I don't want to be a salesperson. Well, guess what? If you're getting somebody to do something and you're especially changing money, you have made a sale somewhere. And if you do not sharpen your skill set and just bring it forward into 2013, you're flat out losing money.
So this could go on probably for a 2-day answer. But yeah. What would you say, how is selling the same today as it's always been? And then how is it different? And maybe the different part we can get into, it could be a whole other dialogue, but obviously with the internet and all, but how would you say it's the same?
Here we go, right here. Here's how it's the same. There's somebody I met 20 years ago, and I bought his book. I met Bob when I first started as a speaker, but The Go-Giver. Have you heard of this before?
Yes.
Okay. This is how it hasn't changed, and the same fundamentals apply. Give you a best example here. I work from home. You work from home. The maid came in on Friday, and I live in Texas. She's a Hispanic maid. She's legal, and she always, I pay her a certain amount, but she always goes above and beyond. So Friday she was here, and I had to run out, and I came back. This applies to sales. So she's cleaning my garage. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, well, I knew you were gone, so I thought I could do it while you were gone. She's out sweeping out and cleaning out the garage. The point is that I wanted to give her more money because she was doing more without asking for more. And she's like, no, you don't have to pay me more. And I'm like, are you kidding? So the way that sales hasn't changed is that the fundamentals that drive us, things that Cialdini, talked about years ago, the reciprocity principle, commitment and consistency, scarcity, authority, liking, those 6 things that drive human behavior and liking in there, that hasn't changed at all. And, Bob's book here, and I'll move to the second part of the question because this could be a 2-day answer. I shot a video recently, and I've always been a giver first. Let me give you something first, and I know that I'll get paid later. I shot a video. Do you actually, because you hear this buzzword, servant leadership. Everybody says the word servant leadership, right? I'm a servant. Yet most people don't actually serve to serve. They serve because of what they're going to get for serving. So what hasn't changed are the fundamentals of what drive us. What has changed is the techniques and the strategies that we use in selling. Because years ago, people never really thought, you heard sales managers and sales trainers say you got to get into their brain. Yet this day and age, that's where neurolinguistics, that's where hypnosis, and that's where behavioral research comes in. How do I really get into somebody's unconscious subjective reality? So that's part of selling that most people do not understand. As at IBM earlier today, they're just now picking up on it. They're just now understanding that. I was talking to the director of training at Keller Williams nationally a couple of days ago, and it's like, we're just now starting to adopt an entire brain-based approach like you have. So to answer that question, it's a long answer, is the fundamentals haven't changed about service and connecting with people. What has changed, though, are the strategies and the techniques that we can use to facilitate that. It makes sense?
Yeah, that's good. It reminds me, there's a guy down in Buda, Texas, just south of Austin.
Okay. Buda, yeah, between San Marcos and Austin.
Yep. And his name is Roy Williams, the Wizard of Ads. And I always remember he talks about buying word of mouth advertising, and he says there's 3 ways: architecturally, right? The arch in St. Louis, or even the golden arches, the old McDonald's, sure. Right? So
right.
You see something big and prominent, you can buy word of mouth. One is kinetics, energy, like the Pikes Peak Fish Market, throwing the fish, or Cirque du Soleil. I'm taking my wife to a show in a couple of weeks up in Vegas, so big energy. But the other he talks about is portions, and giving so much. So like your maid, right, or like Claim Jumper. Do they have Claim Jumper in Texas?
No idea what that is. Maybe.
Jumper, they serve these big old chocolate pie or cake, but these huge portion sizes, generosity, right? So
sure.
Going above and beyond. So that's what your maid's doing, is providing that. So
let me interject there, though, for a second. You talk about, for example, the arches at McDonald's. When we talk about brain-based selling, which is my forte,
right,
is that many companies use brain-based approaches to flow. And then when people were experiencing the most amount of pleasure with a shape of the initial iPad, that's how they designed the initial iPad. So they create their products to make people feel good. Does that make sense?
Wow. Oh, yeah. Oh,
these companies are doing this. For example, Doritos, and I don't know the exact statistic because I'm a sales guy, which means I lose my details. Do you know that even companies like Doritos, they have their Doritos chips that crunch at a certain whatever pressure from the teeth biting into them because they've done so much research. They know that if it's too crunchy, people won't like it. If it's not crunchy enough, they won't like it. So what's engineered into that Dorito is actually a crunch that is brain conducive. Or Cheetos. You lick your fingers. That's all planned with that stuff. It's all orchestrated brain-based stuff.
Well,
so even though we're talking about selling, all the stuff goes beyond at a much deeper level.
Now that I've been in California 8.5 years, I have culture now. So I don't lick my fingers in public. At least when my wife's around. How's that?
Yeah, but that's all designed to release endorphins in the brain. every bit of that.
That's amazing.
People, sales, I mean, this is really important. People talk about, for example, I train at a multi-level company that you know of, we've talked about in the past. And on the call, somebody said, well, I guess people in our culture don't have discipline. That's why they're overweight. We live in a culture that's 81% overweight. And did you know that these companies, for example, I'll use a name because there was an article in the New York Times, McDonald's. Did you know, for example, that they know, and a lot of companies, I mean, a lot of people don't know this, that the brain is hardwired to like carbs and sugar. So what they do is they create all their products to immediately release a sugar and a salt high, which affects the brain just like that. So they're getting people to buy neurologically, and people get actually hooked on the food because the brain actually starts craving the food because the brain wants it because it's hardwired that way, and they build their cells that way. So, I mean, there's so many things that go on neurologically below the scenes that people don't even have an idea that these major companies are using to get people to buy. So I guess to answer your question earlier, that's how it's changed. I mean, the old things are still there, but that's how it's really changed is brain neurology, brain science.
Okay. And then, so maybe the change is the degree to which and the sophistication to which this goes on. But, isn't it true? I mean, when a caveman, or maybe one iteration beyond cavemen, when they actually use a shower or soap, I mean, aren't we, before we go out on a date and we iron our clothes and put on cologne and we shave, I mean, aren't we trying to put our best foot forward and release endorphins in our date to like us better?
Yeah. Well, see, that's actually a metaphor that I use all the time when people say, well, because people have said to me, Jim, you teach people to persuade unconsciously. And I've said, well, let me ask you, and I'm leading people. And by the way, you led me when you said, isn't it true? Your exact linguistics are already planting a suggestion that it's true, okay? However, the metaphor that I use when I'm speaking,
you taught me that.
Somewhere, yeah. Well, lawyers will say that. In trials, they'll lead people with the facts are this, or the truth of the matter is this, and they're leading people. When I'm in audiences and I'll say, for example, how many of you have gone on a date? Everyone will raise their hand. And then I'll go through your scenario. How many of you, like you guys, bought a new shirt, shaved, washed your car? How many of you ladies got your nails done, bought a new outfit? Everyone will raise their hand. And then I'll say, for example, are you sitting across on that first date saying, by the way, I bought a new shirt today because I'm trying to actually persuade and influence you? No, but we're all trying to do it at an unconscious level, so no one ever talks about it. What the most, I think, innovative companies are doing is they're using every resource they have available, and people, every resource they have available to understand what we're talking about now, to use it for what I tell people is an ethical outcome. I believe that if I take money out of your pocket, this is just my belief, I can get money out of anybody's pocket. But guess what? If I'm using my skills just to take money out of your pocket for my benefit only, at some place later in my life, that's going to come back out of my pocket somewhere else. So I tell people, use these techniques to do two things: to shorten your selling cycle and to get people actually from no to yes a whole lot quicker, or to get them off your radar so they're not wasting your time anymore. But to use these things like some companies do unethically, to use them to get people to do things that are in your best interest, I just don't see that being a good use of the tools.
Right. And there will always be, unethical people that'll do things. I mean, I've seen things, you and I have chatted before. I come from a religious background. And, they talk about there's no trait. There's no evil. It's just, but you can use good things for evil purposes.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, it's just everything in moderation. Right? So anything taken too far, but do you think, I know raised the way I was, going to the military academy, the Air Force Academy, they teach us we will not lie, steal, or cheat, nor tolerate among us anyone who does. I've always kind of approached NLP, hypnosis, anything like, I don't want to come across or ever even being accused of being manipulative, but and I'm still growing. I ask you this, that's why I like to interview you, work with you, read your stuff still. I'm still learning NLP. I'm not good at it. I don't think I really even practice it. Maybe some things have sunk in because I've just listened to it so many times.
Sure.
But how can people accelerate their usage of tools like this to bring about a sale You know, maybe even sometimes, like I always teach, you know, hearing no early is a win, right? But how can we use things like this to our benefit and assuage our guilt, if there is any, that we're manipulating people into, you know, like turning them into puppets? You know what I'm getting at?
Yep, absolutely. And a couple of answers here, because we're segueing from behavioral research. We're looking at some NLP now. I tell people that there are no unethical techniques, simply unethical users. And actually, when I did my full-day program, which I do everything online now, people would sign an agreement saying they will not use the material unethically. I can't control what people do. But again, I mean, I ask people just, you grew up, you know, with your background. I grew up in a small Texas town, and I learned 3 things from my dad, a very small farm town boy. Do not lie, do not cheat, and do not steal. And there are swift consequences as a small town Texas farm boy for doing those things.
Come here, boy.
I'm sorry?
Come here, boy, and bring a switch.
Exactly. When I was 5, I took gum off the gum rack at the supermarket, and I got in the car, and my mom said, "Where'd you get that?" I'm like, "Off the rack." She goes, "Did you pay for it?" I said, "No." She took me back into the manager. I had to actually give the gum back and pay for it, and I had to leave my gum. So my parents were very strict about that, but I look at it as, okay, let me give you an example here to segue. You said, how can you use this? Let's talk about NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, created by Bandler and Grinder back in the 70s. And I think most people are at least familiar with the concept of NLP. What I know about you, and we've known each other for a few years, and people watching this, notice when Wes will ask me questions. What he will do is when he's asking questions, he'll sit back in his chair, and he'll start looking up like this. What he's doing is he's visually constructing or visually remembering something. What you're doing also, I'm not sure you notice this, if you can see my eyes, when you're asking me questions, you lean back, which means you're actually putting yourself in a physiology to like draw a board up here in your mind, and you're visualizing things, you're imaging things before you ask. You're basically putting it together in your mind, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to go into now the specifics of whether you're visually remembering or visually constructing something, but what you've told me very quickly in our time together is that most likely you probably process predominantly visual, okay? So how can I use that in sales? So if I know you process predominantly visual, hey, Wes, I'm going to actually show you some stuff in this book, but I'm actually not going to show you the book. I'm going to read it to you. See what happens here? You're like, no, you're not. I'm already in pain. Or what if I said, here, let me get your eyes on it? What would you rather do?
Yeah. Yep.
Get your eyes on it, because you're going to start absorbing it just like that.
Right.
So let's say, for example, which most people, even though people have heard of this, people process in 3 predominant ways: visually, auditorily, and kinesthetically. Visuals move very fast, like I do, predominant visuals. Moderates move at a more moderate pace. The classic moderate in our culture right now, no tossing any stones, this is not a political remark. The classic auditory right now is Barack Obama. You never hear him really moving really fast. You never see his eyes going up. You never hear him moving really slow, getting things out. So automatically, actually, this is a great segue. When I meet people, the first thing I ask myself, first 5 seconds, are they predominantly AVK? Are they predominantly auditory, visual, or kinesthetic, which you've heard me say before? Because if you're predominantly visual, I have to sell to you visually, which means I have to get your beady eyes on something, because you're already actually moving at a faster pace than, let's say, somebody that's a predominantly auditory or kinesthetic. You're wanting to assimilate the information quicker. So if I just sit back and say, hey, I'm going to read you point 1 here, then I take my time, and then point 2, I lose you. So that's one of the advantages of, and that's a very small thing out of everything that I teach, but that's the first thing I ask myself 2 questions when I meet people from a neurolinguistics point of view. Or I could even actually just pace your body language and mirror your body language like I'm doing now as we're talking, to pull people in. People actually go into synchronicity. They go into unconscious rapport very quickly when they're mirrored. Lost my train of thought, so ask another question. Sorry. I was going to answer something, and I lost my train of thought.
Oh, yeah, it'll come back. So how – all right, let me look up.
Visually constructing, visually remembering. You go.
How does that overlap, if it does, with like the DISC assessments? That, for some reason, has stuck in my brain. Well, honestly, the whole DISC, the Myers-Briggs,
sure,
that took me a long time to sink in. And now I'm pretty good at that. is there some overlap there with the visual and the kinetic and the auditory?
Kinesthetic, I have no clue. Actually, I put all of my students, before I coach anybody, they have to actually profile themselves. And I put them through, and you can actually take a free demo there. I tell all of my clients, because I coach like offices and leadership teams, before you ever hire anybody, you send them or you can buy the assessment, salestestonline.com.
Okay.
Hands down, flat out, the best assessment I have ever seen. Wes, go take a free demo. You can take one for free. And when you look at it, it'll tell you, for example, it'll rank people on a scale from 1 to 10 on prospecting. In sales, I look for 3 things. I teach all of my leaders. You look for 3 things. Will they self-motivate? They won't self-motivate. Nothing else matters.
Yep.
Will they self-motivate? Will they prospect? And will they close? When I say close, that's a colloquial phrase, but what I mean, can you lead somebody to sign on the dotted line? So when it comes to, how does NLP play into the DISC assessment? I don't know. I mean, I have my students take the DISC assessment. It's on my website as well. However, what I do is I tell people, go to Sales Test Online, and we'll know exactly where you're starting from, and we'll go from there. But all of that is more about traits. Even the DISC assessment is more about traits than it is anything else. I have never seen any research that correlates, for example, a high D on the DISC assessment, which that plays into NLP. For example, a high D is somebody that's very task-oriented. They get things done. They have a low threshold for patience. I mean, they're just boom, 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 boom. I'm guessing you're probably a high D yourself. I don't know, but many really successful, quick people that are successful very quickly are high Ds. Now, you can take those things and you can break them down and you can filter them over into NLP and vice versa. But I've never seen anybody put it together saying, okay, a high D has this and this and this and this and this. Do they all fit? Yes, but exactly how? I don't know.
So just because somebody's methodical, right, it's like Barack Obama, just because he's deliberate in his words and mannerisms doesn't mean he's necessarily an S or a C, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct. To answer that question, but that even goes back to your earlier question, people that are methodical. Okay, so if a person's methodical, let's say that you've got an engineer who is very methodical and very procedural. You and I are classic salespeople. What that means is we're probably options oriented, which means we can jump around. I can do a little A, a little B, start cleaning my bookshelf, not finish it, which obviously you've done. You can do it later. We can hop around. Yet neurolinguistically, if you've got an engineer who is step A all the way through, step B all the way through, if you try to start selling to that engineer in the way that you and I process, you lose them. They throw their hands up in the air because the brain can't follow along.
Right.
Make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, so there are correlations in there, but to break them all out, it would take me weeks to sit down with pencil and paper and break them all out. And I don't really know that anyone's done that.
Right. So let's go back, to the ethical persuasion, right? I think, I know at least for me, that's always been a biggie. And I'm going to assume, because it's my show, that those listening, it's a big deal to them.
It is. I agree. For most people are very decent people.
Right.
I agree with that.
So, I mean, how can somebody get started on learning NLP, applying NLP to their prospecting and sales efforts? I mean, are there some beginning steps? I'm going to link to your program from my site. But I mean, what other resources, what do you tell people how to get started and not beat themselves up thinking they're learning some underhanded way to make sales?
One, as I look at it this way, people will say to me, well, I don't want to be perceived as a cheesy salesperson. I hear that all the time.
Right.
Let me ask you, are you a cheesy person? If you're not a cheesy person,
Right.
Why would you be perceived as a cheesy salesperson?
Right.
As long as you have, let me go back here to this book. One of my clients, but beyond this book, it just reminds me of this, and then we'll go to your question. One of my clients, a good friend of mine, according to NAR, National Association of Realtors, she's one of the top 20 thought leaders in national real estate. She lives here in Dallas, Texas. She's a business icon. Anybody in business knows her name. I mean, she is... She gave Roger Staubach, you're from Texas, she gave Roger Staubach his start in real estate 40 years ago.
Wow.
That's all that I can say publicly here. But I mean, they've been friends for years. I mean, she started him in real estate. And I was her coach for a couple of years. We're very good friends. And I said, when I first met her, I said, how did you grow your company? This is where sales hasn't changed. And she goes, without any thought, she goes, that's easy. Love, care, concern, and giving. You notice she didn't say, well, persuasive techniques and strategies and all the things that I do. We go back to the foundation: love, care, concern, and giving. And I have watched this woman. I mean, she has the second largest independent real estate company in Texas. I mean, this woman is a powerhouse. And she built her entire business on how much can she give people. She wrote me a Christmas note, a handwritten note, and she goes, I never think about how big I can become or how much money I can make. I always think about how high I can go and how many people can I take with me. So that has built her, and she's in her 70s, and she goes, if I lived till I was 100, I could never, ever spend the goodwill that I have coming back to me. Okay? So I look at it that way. If you're not an unethical person, let me go back here. All that my material does is expedite the process. I always approach it as, can I really help you? Can I be of value to you? Can I get you from point A to point B? If you're not a great fit, it's wrong for me to take your money at that point. Could I convince you? Absolutely yes. Yet I think I'm taking money out of your pocket if I don't do it with the utmost integrity. You've got a request over there to your left.
Here's one of my assistants. Hey, baby girl.
One of your assistants, yeah. So that's the first part, is you've always got to approach it with the utmost integrity. And anybody watching this, you can do whatever you want. I can't control them. You can't control them. But I tell you this, you said you grew up in a religious background. I firmly believe, call it whatever you want, whatever religion, whatever. Galatians, as you sow, so shall you reap. I take money out of your pocket. I steal from you. Somebody's going to take it right back out of my pocket. The bigger value in my material is helping people from no to yes, but moving them. So many people will get stuck on the fence, and even though they know they should do it, they're still stuck because they're afraid to take that leap. My sister and I had a conversation about ethics and this and that, and I said, I'm never afraid to push somebody because I know that I'm strong enough to catch them and help them on the other side. Whereas if I were just to use my skills to push them and get them to do something, but I couldn't catch them, I don't think that's of great value to that person. So we use these skills to get people off the fence, because people will sit on the fence all day long and not do things that we know are literally in their best interest if they would do it. So that's what, again, I mentioned that earlier. That's what I tell my students. Use it to move people quicker or get them off your radar so that they stop wasting your time. Because that's a place that a lot of salespeople waste their time, is letting other people waste their time by not controlling what I call the social frame. Anytime that I sell to people, my approach, I shot a video on this. You ever see, and it's on my website, you ever see the King's Speech? One of the Academy Award couple
but yeah, not in a while.
Okay. Anyway, I'll cut to the chase. Is that many of us go to business, and I've worked all the way from Wall Street to Main Street and in many industries. Many people approach the selling situation as, give us a chance, let us prove we can do a great job for you. We're awesome. We're this, we're that. We're not asking for all your business. We'll just give us some. We'll prove ourselves. That's the wrong approach. See, and you've seen me post on Facebook, I don't use it for business that much, but I have dogs. I'm a dog person. Everyone, this is a really big lesson, so get this, and this is all neurological. This is just part of who we are as beings. We all look for social status, okay? I was talking to somebody earlier today about, we don't look for money. We look for status, and money gets us status. I mean, no one ever says, for example, I want $1 million mortgage, right? But they want that $1 million house because of what people are going to think of them. So I mentioned dogs. When you go to the dog park, if you have dogs, what dogs do is they start jockeying for pack control. What dog's going to be the alpha dog? So you know that, right?
Yeah.
So when we meet people in selling situations, in social situations, we walk into a boardroom, the first thing immediately we start doing is we start sizing people up. Oh, he's got a $20,000 Rolex on. I saw that person drive up in a $120,000 Mercedes. Oh, he must or she must be an admin assistant or whatever. They're lower on the totem pole. So we're always clamoring for status, even though we don't know that we are. We're always, and it's who we are, just like animals, mammals. So we're always looking for status. What many people do in the selling situation is they put themselves in the beta position. What you always want to keep is yourself in the alpha position, in that I'm the prize. You need me more than I need you. And you don't want to do that arrogantly like I just did there. You don't want to do it that way, but that's the mindset you have, is that this is what I have to help you with. Let me show you every bit of this. And you talk and you consult and all your selling process. But what most people do then is they cower, and they give the power to the buyer and let the buyer make the decision. I never let the buyer make the decision. I'll play takeaways saying, Wes, I'll make you qualify yourself. Coaching, Wes, I'm not. Let me give you an example here, and then we can go to the next question. When I actually promote my coaching in large groups, I'll say what you have to do first is, even if you want to be in coaching, doesn't mean that you can. And what I want you to do is I will give them the assessment for sales test online. If you do not score a 7 and above in these categories, you're not a candidate for coaching. Guess what? Now I'm not giving you the opportunity to tell me no. I'm telling you no, and I'm making you want it more because I've dangled the carrot, and now I'm taking the carrot away from you. I'm in the alpha position. You're in the beta position. Mm-hmm. Yet 99% of salespeople are like, oh, please buy my product, please. At every company, let us serve you. Let us prove to you. And they're in the wrong position. Not sure how I got off on that tangent, but that's a very, 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 very powerful takeaway. If everyone watching this, you take away nothing but that, you've got to get is that you cannot give away the power. You cannot actually let that person make the decision. You have to prize yourself. Make that person qualify themselves to you. Now they want it more. And you see online marketers do that. They'll say, for example, if you want to go through our coaching, you have to fill out this online questionnaire. We'll see if you're a fit. We'll get back to you. That's pricing.
Right.
But yet you don't see people using that in traditional selling. Then what happens as a result of that, many people will take the sell. Okay, so I've sold Wes something, but what I've done is I put Wes in the alpha position. Now I'm in the beta position, and I'm a real estate agent. Now Wes is whipping me around until the house gets sold. Wes is saying jump, and I'm saying how high because I'm in the beta position. When you play takeaway, you set the expectation and the frame on the front side. Your client will follow you instead of you following your client. Mm-hmm. So those are the things to make our lives easier because people will waste your time all day long in the sales process. Yeah. So, my job is to streamline, to make sure that people aren't wasting your time and you qualify yourself ethically so that you're leading them and you get done what you need to get done so you can do what you need to do and they can do what they need to do.
Right.
Long answer, but that's powerful. Does that make sense?
No, that's great. I mean, I'm literally writing notes as we go. It's like I'm not going to wait to listen to this again and type it up. I'm going to write it down right now.
And mind you, I'm always nice and I'm always kind. I mean, it's not my job. I don't want to strong arm anybody. But, one of my students recently said he's out in L.A. and he sells high-end real estate. And when he was going through his listing presentation, he said, and it's a simple line, Wes, I'm not a great fit for everyone. I can't work for everyone. Let me ask you some questions about yourself to see if we're a good fit.
Right.
All he's doing in that moment is taking the alpha position from them to him. And I said, Chris, what happened when you did that? And he goes, they started following me. And then after that, they started doing what I wanted them to do because like with dogs, he becomes the pack leader. So very vital. That's a massive, massive takeaway in this time together for people watching because I see time and time again at every level people giving their power away and then chasing people because they'll call people and the person will say, call me in 3 months. Okay, I'll call you in 3 months. And it goes on the calendar, 3 months and 3 months and 3 months. And you know what I'm talking about with that.
It's painful.
And it's painful. When you know what? Boom, cut them off at the beginning. Find out at the beginning. And you do that by taking control. And that does not mean controlling people. That means taking control. We'll wrap up this one question. The person who controls the social frame controls the cell. I didn't say controlling the other person, but controlling the social frame. The video that I shot on the King's Speech, this guy was a prince. He was a son of a king, and he went on to become king. And Lionel had a bet with him. Lionel was his speech therapist. And they made a bet, and Lionel said, you can pay me next time. And the prince said, if there is a next time. Lionel said, I haven't agreed to take you on as a client yet. He took the control back away. Mm-hmm. And that's what most of us are afraid to do is we're afraid to control people because of status.
Yep. Well, and I also think, I'm writing some notes, as I'm listening. You mentioned before, I'm not afraid to push because I'm strong enough to catch them, right, on the other side. Yep. And I'm doing a 3-parter right now, as I mentioned before we started, for my local Chamber of Commerce, just getting back to not necessarily a focus, but just bringing back the emphasis on just pure selling and prospecting and what does it take, human to human touch, conversation, dialogue, persuasion. But You know, and I always tell people the answer for the prospect is deeper than they know, right? Because if they truly knew their exposure and the ramifications of them not taking part of whatever you have to offer, you know, they'd be calling you and clamoring for it. But we have so much going on in our lives, right? It's just things, they bubble up, they get pushed under the surface. So we have to be willing. I always tell people, you have to be willing to be in the presence of uncomfortable prospects, right? And be willing to make them uncomfortable, because sometimes the questions we have to ask are going to bring up pain. You know, if it's a company like you and me doing sales trainings, like how are sales? What are the trends? What's turnover like? What's churn like? What's your sales cycle? Is it increasing or decreasing? You know, what are margins? I mean, we got to bring up ugly things to make them go, yeah, things are bad. Dang, can you help me? You know, so
let me add a caveat to that, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I had read this, several years ago. I walked into a CVS. I don't know if you have them out there, but they're drugstores. Yep. We have them here in Texas. And when I walked into the store, I didn't know why, but I felt good. Now, this CVS wasn't the CVS where you walk in. It's a box store, and it wasn't aisle. When you walked in, it kind of opened up, and it was open in the center, and then all the aisles were squiggly. And I'm like, I don't know why I felt good in this store. Literally, it's what I said. This is comfortable. What I discovered in research a couple of years ago is in a traditional supermarket, do you know, and this all goes back to the croc brain, the primal brain, you know, thousands of years ago, however old we are or whatever, we had to survive. We had to actually protect ourselves. And so we were actually always scanning the environment. The number one thing that we want as human beings, and this is very profound when people get this, is we want to be safe. I mean, you've got kids, right? You want to be safe. So my supermarket analogy here, the straight lines, people actually, they've done research, people get tense at the end of the aisle because they don't know what's right around the corner. Have you ever noticed how you tense up right before you get to the end of an aisle because you don't know who's there?
There could be some jerk jamming down with his cart. Bam, you're going to run into you or something. Right.
Something. But I realized then, in the CVS, I realized that I could see everything and I was safe. I didn't qualify it as safety, but I was safe.
Were there shelves lower or what?
They were a little lower, so you could kind of see around and everything. Unlike the high shelves where you can't see over, you know, that are 7 feet tall. So I realized, and this really hit me a couple of years ago, that when we meet new people, everyone watching, and consider this, the first thing we want to know with that person is, am I safe with that person? So when it comes to sales, what people want is they want to be safe. So you go back to how it hasn't changed. That's how it hasn't changed, is that, you know, I'll talk to you all day long, but I want to be safe. That's why, for example, do you know that many things this day and age, people want to actually interact with the website before a salesperson? Why? Because they don't feel like they're going to be safe with the salesperson, but on the website, they're safe. They've got that barrier between them and the salesperson. So when it comes to me, and when I'm, for lack of a better word, selling people, I do everything that I can to make them feel safe. Because if they feel safe, they'll trust you, they'll open up, and then they'll take the next step.
Right.
But if they do not feel safe with you, if they think you're trying to get something and they're reading that unconsciously, if they don't feel safe, they'll shut down. Even though you're saying, hey, everything you're saying they like, they're going to have that gut feeling, which is unconscious, saying, you know, this sounds good, the price is right, but I just don't know.
Right.
So that's another takeaway, because I realized that in my own personal life with a friend of mine, is that really that's all we want. We want to be safe with people. And when I can create that environment, I can get people to part with money all day long.
Right.
Ethically, obviously.
Right. Very cool. Well, hey, we're coming up on, I don't know, we've been going at least 40 minutes, and like the typical sales unstructured guy, you know, I jammed in 3 things all at once, so I cannot go over. But I will post this up on the site. I'm going to link to your site, of course, with the program that I purchased from you about over 3 years ago. I encourage everyone to take a peek. But not even there. Let's go to my continuity site, because all that information, actually, the program you bought, I give away on the continuity site. Okay. So that, and there's 400 short videos there.
Wow. on the website. It's all cataloged. It's all indexed. When people come in, I lead them. This is what you do. This is how you use it.
Okay.
And it's all persuasion, influence, one final thought, and peak performance. When I talk to sales managers, the first things they'll say is we got to get our sales up. So they're looking for persuasion and influence. That's not where you start. You start your self-management skills, because you know what? If you can't master yourself, if you don't have self-discipline, you can't follow through, you can't focus, you've got beliefs that are not supporting you. If you've got all these things that are working at an unconscious level, you can say, Monday, I'm going to prospect and I'm going to work hard. By Wednesday, you've fallen off track, because this is a big takeaway for people. We only do what we are. That's it. So if you're not a prospector unconsciously, no matter how much you say you're going to change your behavior and do it, you won't do it, or the behavior will stop very quickly. That's why people gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, because they change their behavior to get a result, yet unconsciously they're overweight in their mind. So when people don't hit their sales goals, it's not because of behavior, it's because of identity that drives the behavior. So on that site, in addition to the persuasion and influence videos and audios and everything else there, is a peak performance section, because if I can't get you right in here first, and I can't get rid of the demons and the self-talk and the critical voice in here, nothing else matters.
Right.
So what we'll do is we'll send them to the continuity site.
Okay.
And actually what I'm going to do, final thought, to give to get first, is I'm going to actually open up a free 30-day limited membership where I'm going to give away like 50 videos. I don't know what I'll do yet, but they're full content videos. There's no upsell. There's nothing. And basically, I'll set this up next couple of days where, hey, dig in, start increasing your sales, convince yourself, then let me help you the rest of the way out.
Very cool.
So I know I jumped around a lot. I haven't been interviewed in a while, so I jumped around a lot. I apologize for that.
Hey, that's all right. I like keeping it real, man. It's I don't like too many structured questions, and I think it was great.
Perfect. I had a good time.
Cool. Thank you, sir. I will. You know what? Let's leave it at that. Let me stop right here. Thank you for listening to this interview with Jim Fortin. If you would visit thesaleswhisperer.com/session3, and that's the number 3. This is where you can listen to the podcast, and I will have some show notes as well as a link that Jim mentioned on the interview. So thank you again for listening, and visit thesaleswhisperer.com/session3 to get the link. Good selling.